Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. For over a decade, he lived in peace, just a man, his tools, and 2 acres of Texas dirt. But when his gear started vanishing without a trace, he uncovered a twisted scheme hidden behind manicured lawns and HOA smiles. What he found would shake the whole neighborhood to its core. I've lived on this patch of Texas dirt for over 12 years now. Bought the land myself, fenced it, poured the concrete, built the shop with my own damn hands. It ain't pretty, but it's mine. A 2-acre slice of blue-collar heaven just outside Dallas, pressed up against the backside of the Maple Hills gated community like a tattoo on a Sunday school teacher. We don't talk much, me and the HOA folks. That's just how I like it. My days usually run like clockwork. Rebuild classics by day, drink a beer with the shop door open by night. I've got everything I need, tools, space, and silence. But a couple weeks back, I started noticing things. Off. Nothing big at first, just small annoyances that tugged at the edge of your brain like a tag in the collar of a new shirt. The first thing I remember missing was my 50-foot extension cord, one of those thick, industrial orange bastards. Gone. I thought maybe I left it over at Rick's shop, or maybe one of the neighborhood teens borrowed it and forgot to return it. I let it slide. Hell, I had spares. 2 days later, the pressure washer was gone. That pissed me off. It was a good one. DeWalt, gas-powered, less than 6 months old. I just used it to clean out a radiator. It was parked right behind the shop under the side awning, tucked behind some spare tires. And just like that, poof, vanished. Still, no broken locks, no tire marks, nothing tipped over or jimmied open. I asked around. Rick said he hadn't seen anything, but he did mention that some scrap metal he kept behind his garage had gone missing too. Just up and disappeared one night. He figured it was some punk looking to sell it for beer money. I didn't like where this was going, so I started paying closer attention. That weekend, I rolled my Husqvarna mower out to tune the carb. I keep her in good shape. Replaced the handle with a red powder-coated bar last summer, just for fun. Well, I get distracted with a customer's truck, forget about the mower, and by the time I remember to lock her up the next morning, she's gone too. Now, I'm not a paranoid man, but that felt like a damn insult. I walked the property line. Nothing cut, nothing broken. My gate still latched. But my stuff, piece by piece, walking away in the dark. I called the sheriff's department and filed a report. Friendly deputy showed up, took down the list, nodded a lot. He said, and I quote, "Could be local kids. No sign of forced entry, though. Keep things locked up tighter." No kidding. So I made a list. Over the next week, I added 1 circular saw, a bucket of assorted bolts and nuts, 2 ratchets, a 6-foot aluminum ladder, and a milk crate full of old wiring I'd been saving for a custom project. None of that's cheap. And more importantly, I didn't misplace a damn thing. I don't have security cameras yet, something I kept meaning to get around to. But with everything going on, I finally ordered a full 4-camera motion-triggered system. It was supposed to arrive that Friday. The thing that bugged me the most? Whoever was doing it knew the layout. They weren't rifling through things. They were picking. Quietly, thoughtfully. No mess, no trash, no broken locks. Like someone casing the place for weeks and choosing only what they could sell. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just random theft. It felt curated, and I had a sneaking suspicion I wasn't the only one being targeted. Next morning, I drove down to check in on old Mr. Barnes 2 lots over. He's got a collection of vintage light fixtures he sells at the flea market. I asked if he'd had anything go missing lately. He frowned and scratched his head, then said, "Actually, yeah, one of my old brass porch lamps is gone. Thought I maybe lent it to my nephew, but now I'm not so sure." Something was happening. And it wasn't just dumb luck. Someone out there had figured out which of us weren't part of the HOA, and they were cherry-picking our gear like it was a damn Walmart. I didn't have proof yet, but I had a plan. Install the cameras, catalog everything I owned, lock the shed every night like I was guarding gold, and wait. Whoever was doing this was smart, but I'd been broke before, and broke makes you creative. You don't survive running a shop on the edge of Maple Hills without learning how to play a long game. I wasn't just going to catch them. I was going to make sure that when I did, there'd be no way they'd wiggle out. I was heading out to drop off a rebuilt carburetor to my buddy Dave, who lives about 10 minutes past Maple Hills. Normally, I'd take the highway around, but there was a wreck near the overpass, so I cut through the HOA roads, the fancy paved ones with little signs that say things like "Community values start here" and "Speed limits strictly enforced." I was halfway down Cypress Lane when I spotted the crowd. Lawn chairs, folding tables, bright canopies. Looked like a damn street fair exploded on someone's lawn. Then I saw the sign, HOA Garage Sale, Organizer Karen L. There it was, red serif font, clean, corporate, real proud. I slowed down, curious, not because I wanted to buy anything. I don't need another damn toaster, but something about the setup felt off. Maybe it was the way the tables were arranged. Too much order, too much display. This wasn't some garage cleaning. It looked curated, like a damn showroom. Then I saw it. My mower. It sat there like nothing happened, front and center, gleaming in the sun. And I knew it was mine because of the powder-coated red handle. Custom job. Only one like it around here. A man was pushing it toward a nearby patch of grass, clearly trying to show a potential buyer how well it worked. I pulled over and killed the engine. At first, I just stared, not because I couldn't believe it. Hell, I knew someone had taken it. But because seeing it out in the open like that, it was bold. Like someone spit on my porch and asked for lemonade. I got out and started walking. I wasn't charging, not yet, just slow and steady. I pulled out my phone and started filming, zoomed in on the mower, then panned to the table beside it, labeled lawn and garden, all neatly tagged with prices. I spotted a familiar ladder, 6-foot aluminum, same dents near the hinge, a cordless drill with duct tape on the handle, mine. Even the blue toolbox that had disappeared last month, like a goddamn museum of my missing gear. The sign next to it had a little logo in the corner, HOA branded, and underneath in bold, donated items only. All proceeds go to Maple Hills Beautification Fund. That's when I saw the name, Karen L. And right under it, President, Maple Hills HOA. My blood pressure hit third gear. I took more photos, every damn angle I could, then backed away and called the sheriff's department. Told dispatch it was a theft in progress and that I had evidence. They said a unit would be there shortly. So I waited, parked under a tree 2 houses down, phone still recording. 15 minutes later, 2 deputies arrived. One I recognized from the last time I reported the missing mower. I flagged them down and explained everything. Showed them the photos. Told them I could provide the serial number from the mower's purchase receipt, which I kept for warranty. We walked back toward the sale. One of the deputies asked to speak with whoever was in charge. And out she came, Karen. Perfect posture, pastel sweater tied around her shoulders like a yacht club captain, and that kind of tight smile that said she was used to being obeyed, not questioned. "Oh, officers," she chirped, clearly unbothered. "What seems to be the issue?" I stepped forward. "That lawnmower right there? That's mine. And a bunch of other things here are too." She blinked, still smiling. "Excuse me." I held up my phone. "That mower has a custom red handle I installed. I have the receipt, serial number, and video of it at my place just 3 weeks ago. And that's my ladder. That's my drill. I can ID every last one of them." Karen laughed softly. I swear to God, she laughed. "Sir, all of these items were donated by members of our community. We collect things for these sales all the time. I have no idea where they originally came from." One of the deputies looked at me, then at her. "Ma'am, do you have documentation of the donations? Sign-ins? Transfer records?" Karen paused. "Well, no, not exactly. But these events are about community spirit, not bureaucracy." I noticed her twitch then, a flicker in the corner of her eye when she spotted the badge number on the deputy's chest. She suddenly adjusted her voice to sound softer, more helpful. "I suppose there could have been some mix-ups," she said. "People leave things near the community bin sometimes." "Community bin?" I asked. "On whose property?" She opened her mouth, closed it again. "Look, maybe we should pause this conversation. I'd be happy to." I cut her off. "Don't bother. I've already logged serials and filed police reports. I've got time-stamped photos of most of the stuff you're selling. On my property." The deputies told her they were going to catalog the items in question. I could see her smile falter as they started walking around with their notepads. I pointed out more gear, a rusted breaker bar, my bolt bucket, a specific shop lamp I hadn't even noticed was gone until now. And then something twisted even more in my gut. I saw a brass porch lamp sitting on the far end of the table. I'd seen that same lamp hanging off old Mr. Barnes's patio for over a decade. I took a photo and made a mental note to check with him. They told Karen not to touch or sell anything further. She nodded, trying her best to seem composed, but I could see the cracks forming in her armor. Her hands were trembling. I didn't say another word, just got in my truck, put it in gear, and rolled off slow. The sun was high, the neighborhood was quiet, and my stolen tools were sitting right there in the open, dressed up as charity. This was bigger than a few missing items. And now, I wasn't just going to catch her. I was going to bury her story so deep in police reports and receipts that she'd need a ladder. My ladder to climb out. I didn't sleep much after that garage sale fiasco. My mind kept spinning, replaying the smug way Karen stood there, acting like she ran a damn charity, not a black market tool ring. The cops took my report seriously enough, but I knew how things went around here. If you wanted something done, you had to do it yourself. Thoroughly, legally, creatively. So the next morning, I got to work. First, I took inventory of every single item in my garage and under my awnings. I took photos, recorded serials, scribbled old dings and scratches I could use to identify them later. I started locking up every night like I lived in a war zone. I even installed the new cameras, 4 of them, all motion triggered, streaming to the cloud. But I wanted more than footage. I wanted bait. That's when I built the fake shed. I cleared a spot under the back awning and threw together a structure out of scrap wood, just sturdy enough to look like it might be holding something valuable. I draped a dusty tarp over it and added a rusty padlock, just for show. It looked careless, vulnerable, like the kind of place you'd check if you were, say, sneaking onto someone's property looking for things to collect. Inside, I placed a couple of items from my junk pile, an old Milwaukee cordless drill with no battery, a broken grinder, a cracked toolbox, and a beat-up welding mask I hadn't used in years. The real trick was the GPS tracker I buried inside the drill casing. Small, silent, synced to an app on my phone. I also coated the toolbox handle with a transparent UV marking fluid, the kind that glows under blacklight but's invisible to the eye. If that box ended up somewhere else, I could prove where it came from. Then I waited. 4 nights went by. Nothing. On the 5th night, I got a notification on my phone at 2:15 a.m. Motion detected. Back shed camera 3. I bolted upright, checked the feed. It was grainy, but clear enough. A hooded figure slipped in through the side of my fence. They moved low, with purpose. No flashlight, no fumbling. Straight to the decoy shed. I held my breath as I watched them open the lock with a practiced twist and pull back the tarp. 2 minutes later, they were gone. Toolbox in hand, drill under the arm. I waited until morning, then checked the GPS signal. The drill pinged just off Sycamore Lane, right inside the Maple Hills perimeter, a couple hundred feet from Karen's property. By noon, it had moved again, this time to a smaller structure behind the HOA Community Center. According to Google Maps, it was labeled as a maintenance storage unit. Yeah, maintenance my ass. I drove down there in the afternoon, stayed in my truck, parked 2 houses away, watching through a pair of old hunting binoculars. After a while, I saw Karen step out of the unit with gloves on, hauling a tote bin toward her SUV. I couldn't make out what was in it, but it looked heavy. I didn't confront her, not yet. I had something better: timestamps, footage, GPS logs, and a tracker still live. I called Deputy Rivas, the same guy from the garage sale. Told him I had evidence that stolen property was moved from my lot to a locked facility in HOA territory, and that I had location data to prove it. To his credit, he didn't shrug it off. An hour later, I met him at the sheriff's office with the footage and GPS logs. He watched it twice, quiet the whole time, then nodded slowly. "This is enough for a search warrant," he said. That evening, 2 sheriff's deputies and a county investigator showed up at the HOA maintenance unit with a warrant in hand. I didn't go with them, but I waited for the call. And when it came, it felt like winning the lottery. They found my fake drill, toolbox, welding mask. But that wasn't all. Inside the unit were more than 60 items, everything from power tools and garden equipment to an air fryer still in the box. Some had faint name labels scratched off, others still had tags or serial numbers. One ladder even had my last name on the underside in fading Sharpie. But the real kicker? They found a binder, a big black one labeled donations and drop locations. Inside were printed maps of the surrounding neighborhoods with notes in red pen. No HOA, tools visible, RV parked, nobody home on weekdays, backyard accessible behind hedge. Pages and pages of this stuff. Then came the spreadsheet, saved on a USB stick, opened on a sheriff's laptop. It was titled Garage Sale Inventory HOA Fund. There were item codes, estimated values, status updates, sold, moved, held. Some items had notes like Mrs. Parker donated or found behind fence, unclear ownership. Unclear, my ass. Rivas told me they also found cash logs, roughly $8,000 in proceeds listed under different sale events, but all ending up routed through the same PayPal account. Guess whose name it was under? Karen L. Langford. She wasn't arrested yet, but Rivas said it was coming. They were preparing charges, and she wouldn't just be looking at petty theft anymore. I hung up, locked the garage, and stood for a moment under the security light. Let her keep smiling at the HOA meetings. Let her keep pretending this was just some little mix-up. I had a fake shed, a glowing toolbox, and a drill that tattled. And now, the law was listening. A couple days after the sheriff's raid on the HOA storage unit, word started to spread, slow at first, like a splinter working its way to the surface. Maple Hills was usually a place where gossip came dressed up in yoga pants and mimosa brunches, but this time, it wore a badge. I didn't have to do much. The neighborhood started turning on itself. Karen, of course, kept up appearances. She even issued a community update on the HOA Facebook page. Due to ongoing confusion regarding inventory and event logistics, the HOA garage sale program is being temporarily paused. Thank you for your continued trust and support. Confusion, huh? Yeah, I guess stealing looks confusing when you're the one caught holding the bolt cutters. But what surprised me was how many people reached out privately. Folks I didn't even know, current and former HOA residents, messaging me anonymously, offering information. Some of it was junk. Some of it was gold. One message stood out, came from an old Gmail account. No name. Just said, check with Laura M. She was on the board for 3 years. Ask about adjustments. She'll know. So I did. Laura lived a few streets into Maple Hills. I'd seen her once at a zoning hearing. She was the only board member who voted against a fence height restriction. She looked tense when I knocked on her door, like she expected someone worse. I told her what I knew about the GPS sting, the binder, the spreadsheet, and then I said the word, adjustments. She froze, then stepped aside. Inside, she poured herself some wine, none for me, and sat at her kitchen island like someone waiting to confess to a priest. Karen calls it selective enforcement, she said. She'd waive dues for certain families, cancel fines, delay notices, all off the books. It was always people who helped her. Helped her how? Covered for her, stayed quiet, let her use their addresses for donations that never existed. One guy got his entire patio remodel approved retroactively after it was already done without a permit. And in return, she kept their names off the radar or gave them gifts from garage sale funds, garden lights, smart thermostats, that kind of thing. It wasn't just theft anymore. It was a shadow economy powered by intimidation and reward. Laura said she tried to confront Karen once, brought it up at a board meeting. Next thing she knew, an anonymous complaint came in about her son's birthday party allegedly violating noise rules. Then another about a non-compliant mailbox. The pressure made her quit. But why didn't you report it? I asked. She laughed bitterly. To who? The board was Karen, and the people who weren't her friends were afraid of her. She paused, then reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope. Inside were printed copies of HOA correspondence, warning letters that had never gone public, all signed by Karen, all targeting residents who'd questioned policies or fees. I asked if she'd be willing to share it with the sheriff's office. Her hands shook, but she nodded. If it gets her out of here, hell yes. Later that week, I heard from another resident, Miguel, older guy, ex-Air Force, said he'd bought a donated chainsaw at one of the HOA sales last year, then realized weeks later it had his initials scratched into the underside. When he confronted Karen, she told him he must have forgotten he gave it away. And like an idiot, he'd believed her. But now, he was ready to talk. We started gathering names, residents who'd had similar experiences or who'd gotten off-the-record favors for staying quiet. One woman admitted she'd received a free lawn service voucher after she told Karen about a neighbor leaving tools out. Another guy had an entire grill donated to the sale. A grill he swore went missing off his deck last summer. The stories piled up, the dots connected, and they all pointed in one direction. So I took it a step further. I met with an attorney, Morgan Keats, civil litigator, grumpy and sharp as a box of roofing nails. I handed him a thumb drive with everything I had. Videos, GPS data, sale inventory, statements from residents, even the fake donation posts Karen had made online. Morgan didn't even blink. "This ain't just theft," he said. "This is racketeering with a neighborhood newsletter." He helped me put together the beginnings of a class action lawsuit. We reached out to everyone affected, folks who had lost property, who'd been intimidated, who'd bought back their own damn stuff at inflated prices. By the end of the week, we had 15 names. 15 people who were ready to stand up and say, "Yeah, we see you now." Karen didn't know it yet, but the walls she built around herself, the silent favors, the debt forgiveness, the whispers and threats, they were starting to crumble. And when they fell, they'd land right on top of her. When they finally brought her in, it didn't happen with sirens and handcuffs. It was quieter than that. Surgical. A sheriff's cruiser pulled into her driveway at 10 in the morning on a Thursday, unmarked. Karen walked out in slacks and a pearl necklace like she was on her way to brunch. She smiled at the deputy, nodded politely, got in the back seat without cuffs, calm as a sunrise. But she didn't know what was waiting for her in court. The charges were formal now: possession of stolen property, conspiracy to defraud, falsification of financial records, obstruction, and a few more technical ones that Morgan said would stack up like bricks. The DA wasn't playing softball, not with 60-plus stolen items cataloged, over a dozen affidavits, a glowing UV-marked toolbox, and a drill that ratted her out with GPS breadcrumbs. Court was held in the county municipal building. Pale yellow bricks, government beige inside, the smell of dry paper and bad coffee hanging in the air like mold. I sat in the second row, just behind Morgan, flanked by a few other plaintiffs from the now official class action group. No one said a word. We just watched. Karen entered with her lawyer, some smooth-talking guy in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly shop expenses. She still had that composure, but it was cracking at the edges. Her walk wasn't as sharp. Her eyes darted more. And when she saw the list of names on the plaintiff's bench, her lips twitched like she'd bitten down on a lemon seed. The judge, an older man with a slow voice and no patience for theatrics, asked for opening statements. Karen's lawyer tried to spin it as a series of misunderstandings, claiming she had no reason to believe the items were stolen, that the donation system was informal but well-intentioned, and that community benefit was always the priority. When it was Morgan's turn, he stood up, looked straight at the judge, and said, "Your Honor, we will demonstrate that the defendant orchestrated a long-running scheme of selective theft, resale, and intimidation under the false pretense of community service, and profited from it directly. She used the authority of a private homeowners association to disguise larceny as charity." Then came the evidence. They brought out the binder, the printed maps, the spreadsheet with columns labeled HOA Fund, Target, and Vulnerability. They showed footage from my fake shed, side by side with the GPS logs. They played the clip of her walking out of the HOA storage unit with my decoy toolbox in hand. And then came Laura. She testified calmly, clearly, like she'd been waiting for this for years. She confirmed the silent perks system, the forgiven fines, the threats. She handed over internal HOA emails and showed how Karen funneled proceeds into her own PayPal under the guise of community maintenance donations. The defense scrambled to discredit her, claimed she was disgruntled, jealous, emotionally unstable. But the judge didn't buy it, especially not after Miguel took the stand and described in painful detail how he'd unknowingly bought back his own chainsaw and only realized the scam weeks later. But the real shift came when the prosecution revealed something even I didn't know. Turns out, Karen had tried to file for a non-profit status for the HOA sale events. On paper, that would have shielded her from taxes and allowed her to accept direct donations, except she'd never finished the paperwork. It was rejected twice for insufficient documentation and inconsistent accounting. Why was that important? Because she had still been advertising the events as HOA-approved non-profit sales. That tipped her actions into a different legal category: fraud. The courtroom went silent when the DA dropped that line. Karen's lawyer asked for a recess. The judge gave him 20 minutes. When they came back, her face was pale. For the first time, she looked like she might be realizing just how deep she was. She didn't speak. Her lawyer requested a continuance, citing the complexity of new financial revelations. The judge granted it, but not before setting bail and restricting Karen from accessing any HOA property, funds, or facilities. She walked out of the courtroom with her jaw clenched so tight I thought her molars might explode. We stayed seated. We didn't cheer. We didn't need to. The next part wasn't up to us. The law was moving now, and it was moving fast. I figured she'd lay low after court. Most people, when faced with felony charges, stop making bold moves. But not Karen. No, she doubled down. 3 nights after the hearing, just past 1 in the morning, my motion alert went off again. Not from my yard this time. From the drone feed. Yeah, I'd mounted a drone on a pole by the edge of my property, angled just high enough to keep an eye on the HOA side. It wasn't flying, just sitting still, disguised under a bird deterrent cap, feeding me night vision footage in real time. Paranoid? Maybe. But paranoia had been paying off lately. The feed showed the backyard of Karen's house, normally pristine, trimmed hedges, matching patio furniture, artificial turf with stupid HOA-approved dimensions. But tonight, the space was lit up by a flickering orange glow. She was burning something. At first, I thought it was a late-night bonfire, but then I saw the trash bins lined up behind her. She was hauling plastic containers and cardboard boxes out of her garage and feeding them into a steel fire pit, one of those store-bought barrel things with mesh lids. And she was doing it fast, frantic. She wore gloves, a hoodie, and kept checking over her shoulder like the devil was watching. She didn't look like the Karen who'd once told a woman her wind chimes violated community auditory harmony. She looked like someone unraveling. I hit record. 47 minutes of footage, her dragging boxes, feeding the flames, smacking them down when they flared too high. At one point, she even tossed in what looked like a plastic filing bin, lid and all, sending up a column of black smoke that no doubt stank halfway across Maple Hills. I called Rivas, told him what I was seeing in real time. He was on duty and didn't waste a second. "We're on our way," he said. "Keep that footage secure." By the time the patrol cars rolled up, the fire was mostly embers. Karen stood frozen by the pit like a kid caught smoking behind the gym. One deputy had a flashlight on her. Another radioed for a fire marshal. County law required it when documents might be involved. They didn't arrest her on the spot. Not that night, but they seized what remained of the pit. Marshals dug through the ash and pulled out scorched pages, charred folders, melted USB drives. Turns out she hadn't just been torching random junk. Among the half-burned remains were fragments of HOA meeting minutes that were never officially filed. A stack of donation logs with inconsistent signatures, one of which, hilariously, was listed as John Donor. Partial PayPal transaction printouts, and, most damning, a personal ledger listing bonus distributions from sale revenue to 5 board members, each with a first-name-only label and an amount in parentheses. Cash payouts. Straight from the fund she claimed went to playground improvements. That made it obstruction, destruction of evidence, tampering, add-on charges. The next morning, the sheriff's office released a statement. "We are expanding our investigation into potential systemic fraud within the Maple Hills HOA." Karen was no longer just a defendant. She was a trigger for a full-on corruption probe. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. Rumors flew fast. Some said 2 board members resigned before lunch. Another claimed someone tried to delete the HOA's shared Google Drive account before it was subpoenaed. But none of that mattered as much as the look on Karen's face when the fire marshal released his preliminary report and the local news got wind of it. She tried to spin it, said she was disposing of outdated clutter, but the reporter interviewing her outside her home noticed something. The plastic on her gloves was still blackened. And she slipped when asked what was burned, said community files before correcting herself to personal files. Too late. The headline ran that evening, HOA President burns evidence in theft case. Investigation widens. My phone blew up. Even people from other counties were reaching out. One guy from Houston messaged me, "Your HOA lady just made the news here. You legend." I wasn't looking to be a legend. I just wanted my damn tools back. But now, this thing was bigger than tools. It was about every neighbor who'd been bullied, fined, silenced, or gaslit into submission. Karen had played queen for too long, and the whole kingdom was catching fire. And I had it all. Recorded, backed up, triple copied. Let her burn whatever she wanted. The truth. The truth was fireproof. The courtroom was fuller this time. Local reporters filed into the back row, whispering and adjusting camera settings. A few HOA board members were seated off to the side, looking like kids forced to sit through church after being caught with fireworks. And Karen. She sat alone. No pearls this time, no pastel sweaters, just a gray blazer 2 sizes too big, and hair pulled back tight enough to look painful. This wasn't a hearing anymore, it was a reckoning. The DA opened with a stack of new charges: obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, mail fraud, wire fraud, and now even tax evasion. Turned out she hadn't reported any of the garage sale proceeds for over 3 years. Every cent of those donations went straight into her personal checking account, funneled through multiple event names and HOA aliases. They didn't stop there. Investigators traced over 25 silent perks given to board members or friendly residents, everything from waived dues to unapproved landscaping jobs billed as community maintenance. At least 4 people were now under investigation themselves for knowingly participating in the scheme. One had already flipped, according to Morgan. Karen's face during all this was something to behold, a portrait of disbelief crumbling into nausea. Her mouth stayed pressed in a hard line, but her eyes darted across the courtroom like she was counting exits. And then came the testimony that cracked the floor open. Remember Mr. Barnes, the retired electrician 2 lots down, whose brass porch lamp ended up on Karen's sale table. He was wheeled in by his granddaughter, slow and dignified, with a thick folder of receipts and photos. He spoke quietly, but every word carried weight. "She told me I must have donated it," he said, nodding toward the lamp, which sat on the evidence table like a smug little trophy. "But I've got a picture of it on my patio last Christmas. There's even a crack in the glass from when my grandson hit it with a tennis ball." He held up the photo, and there it was, plain as day. Same lamp, same crack, same house. When Morgan asked him if he'd ever given Karen permission to take anything from his property, he leaned forward and said, "Hell no. I wouldn't let that woman borrow a cup of sugar." The courtroom chuckled. Even the judge let the corner of his mouth twitch. But Karen looked like she might be sick. Then the forensic accountant took the stand. He walked the court through 3 years of financial records, highlighted transactions labeled beautification funds that led straight to Karen's debit card, Amazon orders, gift cards, even 2 hotel stays during what she claimed was an out-of-town training seminar. She wasn't just running a scam, she was living off it. Morgan rested the case with one final detail, a printed quote from Karen herself, found in an internal HOA memo where she described the sales as a win-win for community efficiency. He read it aloud, looked right at her, and said, "That efficiency came at the cost of trust, privacy, and the rights of people who never even agreed to be part of your so-called community." Karen didn't take the stand. Her lawyer knew better. Instead, they submitted a last-minute plea deal proposal. She would plead guilty to 3 charges: possession of stolen property, fraud, and destruction of evidence, in exchange for reduced sentencing. But the judge wasn't having it. "You orchestrated theft under the guise of neighborhood goodwill," he said, voice stern. "You used your position not to serve, but to take. This court does not accept your deal." Sentencing was set for the following week. But that day, when the bailiff let her out, there were no cameras in her face, no reporters shouting questions, just silence. The HOA itself didn't survive the week. Under public pressure and legal scrutiny, the county issued a formal injunction. Maple Hills HOA was to be suspended pending full audit. All board members were required to turn over their devices, passwords, and financial statements. The office was sealed, community funds frozen. Residents, once eager to defend their exclusive enclave, now whispered apologies in grocery store aisles. A few even dropped by my place, bringing back borrowed tools, asking for updates, avoiding eye contact. It wasn't vindication I felt. Not exactly. It was something quieter, like finally exhaling after holding your breath through a storm. 3 months later, the banner still hangs at the edge of my driveway. Private property. I have cameras. The HOA doesn't speak for me. It's not fancy, just white letters on red vinyl, zip-tied to a steel gatepost. But it's done more to stop random cars from rolling up than any neighborhood watch sign ever did. You'd be surprised how respectful people get when they think they're being recorded. Karen's trial ended in June, 12 years. That's what the judge gave her. She broke down when the sentence was read. No more tight-lipped defiance, no press-ready posture, just a tired woman in a suit she didn't pick, being led away while the courtroom exhaled in relief. She's serving time in a medium security facility just outside Fort Worth. From what I hear, she's not popular with the other inmates. Something about trying to organize a block beautification committee in her unit didn't go over too well. Most of the stolen items were returned. Not everything. Some were sold off or damaged beyond repair. But enough. I got my mower back, my ladder, the drill that tracked its own kidnapping, even the milk crate of wires. The cops actually apologized when they handed it to me like it was evidence in a murder trial. Our class action suit settled out of court. The insurance company representing the HOA agreed to a payout of $1.2 million, split among 17 plaintiffs. It won't make me rich, but it bought me a new lift for the shop, paid off my truck, and let me take a week off for the first time in 5 years. As for Maple Hills, they're rebuilding. Or trying to. The county appointed a temporary oversight board, stripped of enforcement powers. They're reviewing every fine, every citation, every unpaid contribution that Karen ever pushed through. One guy even found out his backyard fire pit had been legal the whole damn time. He had the receipts. Karen just didn't like the smoke. Some of the former board members have vanished from public life. A couple moved away. One guy tried to start a podcast about HOA reform and got roasted into digital oblivion within 3 episodes. But not everyone's bitter. A few residents have actually tried to do right, apologized for staying quiet, for believing the lies, for being more worried about their shrubs than their neighbors. One woman, Darlene, I think, brought me banana bread and a note that just said, "Thank you for standing up. I didn't eat the bread." Still not that trusting, but the note's taped to the inside of my shop fridge. These days, things are quiet. Not peaceful, that's too tidy a word, but calm. I work. I lock up. I sleep without checking my cameras every hour. The sensors still ping once in a while, but it's usually a raccoon or a delivery truck turning around. No one cuts through my property anymore. No one forgets to return what they borrowed. The HOA stays on its side of the fence. And I stay on mine. Every now and then, I catch myself watching the horizon near the Maple Hills entrance, waiting to see a pastel sweater march down the street, clipboard in hand, ready to scold the wild back into order. But she's not coming back. And even if someone like her does show up again someday, someone with rules and charm and a smile sharp enough to bleed you dry, I'll be ready. Because I've got cameras now and a damn good memory.